afternoon. How are you doing, Jameed?
I am doing incredibly well, Tia. How was that? Little insider joke. I never answer when people ask me how I'm doing. So.
Okay, welcome to our Saturday afternoon show, focusing a little bit on gambling. So we had
Yay!
we had promised that Jameed would take us through the ins and outs of gambling and how to figure out, I guess, a line.
I guess a line.
I guess honestly, Jameed thinks that he is going to teach me the nuances of gambling so that I will become some savant gambler who can make a little bit of pocket money like apparently he says he does. I don't have any evidence or
Well,
proof
first
that
of
that's
all,
actually true.
all that is allegedly because I live in Georgia, a state in which gambling is illegal.
I said
So
I
this
didn't.
is
I said
all
there's no evidence. There's absolutely no
this is
evidence.
all hypothetical. If you are lucky enough to live in one of the states that gambling is illegal, that is legal, take it to the bank. If you live in another state, do not go online and look up offshore gambling. Do not look up offshore gambling or online gambling and find good lines. Don't do that. I don't want you to go to offshore gambling or online gambling to find good lines. Don't do that.
Right. We just monopoly money, peanuts,
Exactly.
just
Exactly.
things like that. So the NBA playoffs have started today. We have several series that are we have one series that is actually in progress at this time, and I think that we're going to start off with you really teaching us how to choose, how to make decisions in regards to betting in as connected with the play with basketball in the playoffs, and eventually it'll lead into how to make decisions maybe in baseball, fantasy football,
Oh gosh, baseball is
regular
hard.
football,
Baseball is
NFL
hard.
football, because I understand that you don't like to bet college. So,
No, I love betting college.
oh,
Yeah, I love talking about betting college. That's what I meant. I love talking about betting college.
right.
Yeah. So, college is probably the most predictable of all the leagues. So baseball is really, really hard because you pay a lot for favorites, and even the best pitcher is going to start like 36 games, 32 to 36 games. Then they're going to get 17 wins, and you're going to be like, yay. But
So
on the
hold on. You have to talk me through this as if I am a 5-year-old. So, what do you mean by favorites?
So the way you've seen those minus signs in front of the numbers, right? And I think we're going to start off. We're going to go on a website so we can see some lines, and then we're going to talk about how to bet, when to bet. The best bets that you make are the bets that you don't make. So in other words, a lot of the best gambling research leads you to figure out which games not to touch with a 10-foot pole. And it's not more enjoyable than watching a game that you decided not to touch with a 10-foot pole go opposite the way you thought it was going to go, and you don't have any money on it. You're like, phew. So how do
I
you
think
get to that point?
I think it's important to note something that you have told me over and over and over again is that you never bet on the Falcons, you never bet on the Hawks, you'll never bet on the Braves, and it's because you don't you betting is a science for you. And those teams are emotional for you, so you never make an emotional bet.
Listen. You can't see the game objectively. In fact, sometimes when you're betting your home team, you have too much information. You're like, well, I saw 0017. He had a great game, third game from 14. He had 14 points and 10 rebounds. That tells me he's going to do great. He might not get 6 minutes in this series. So,
Understanding 0017 is a Kongu on the Atlanta Hawks
right,
team.
and so that's an example of sometimes you know too much about your home team. Even when you say, "Oh, I can bet without emotions," I can't. I can admit that, and it's not like
There's such thing as having too much information when it comes to gambling.
It is. It is because sometimes you have to see it. There's two views. there's the sharp view and there's the square view. So you're going to hear those terms come up a lot. The sharp view and the square view. And there's a bunch of sharp guys who put a bunch of time into this that are way better than me. But they're they're rating every game that's there. And what I'm telling you is I'm never rating every game that's there. I'm going to select the games. So you couldn't have a good gambling show that was like, here's our 3 picks. Because the country is like, there's 16 games. What the hell are you beating this 3 picks? No. you know, what I like to do is concentrate on the ones that you can feel like you have a clear winner on and that kind of stuff. And specifically, we're going to focus now on the NBA. As we get closer to the football season, we'll talk about what happens in college football, because college football has some historical favoritism that is hard to overcome. It is going to be hard for certain teams. Vandy may never, ever, not talking about beat Alabama, because that may never happen, but cover against Alabama, because it's just happened so many times. So you don't want to be the one jumping out there with the thing. You want to be ahead, but sometimes you get too far ahead. But I am actually going to pull up this good website that I actually like. Right, there's a website called Odds Checker that I actually. So there's a website called Odds Checker. So I'm gonna bring that on, right? And I really like this website because it can give you a good start, even though this is not what we're going to talk about, or this is not what we're going to bet, right? So let's look at these sample games, Tia. All right.
Okay.
So you'll hear Washington Wizards -3.5. Washington Wizards -3.5. You see that number?
Yes, I see the -3.5.
Okay, that means Washington is favored to win by 3.5. Okay?
Negative means favored.
Negative is always going to mean that team is favored to win the game.
Got it.
All right. So the converse of that is, in that same game, the Orlando Magic is +3.5.
Okay.
All right. So if Washington is favored by 3.5 and they win by 2, and you bet Washington, did you win or lose?
If is it a straight bet? I mean, there's
yes,
straight bet and spreads and all of that kind of stuff, right?
No, we're only talking about spreads, because straight bets are like for couples. But we're always going to be talking about it against the spread. So if I bet that Washington was going to win by 3.5 and they won by 2, did they win or lose my bet?
I would say they lost.
There you go. Right.
The delta is 1.5.
Right. See, we got to get this nerdiness into some dollars. All right. So, if you pick Washington,
so the number represents how many points?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So when you're not just saying
Washington won by 4 or more, then you won.
Right. And sometimes you'll hear 3.5 talked about as 3 and a hook. Right? So
why?
A half and a hook is the same thing.
Why?
Because if it's -3, if the game is 110 to 107, then that's a push. That means Vegas doesn't have to pay you. But the reason why Vegas likes to be at a half is because 3.5 means they have to win by 4.
Right.
So really, you're pushing it up because there's no half points in the NBA, right? So that's one of the crucial things, right?
What a scam.
Okay. Now, but I'm going to take you to another number that's right here that you've probably ignored for years? Because I'm sure you know football well enough to say the Falcons are favored by 3 or even 3.5 or whatever, right? But there's another number sitting right here in your face that's not talked about enough, right? And this is the VIG, right? So
The
under
what?
that 3.5, it's saying it's going to cost you 105 to bet 100 units, and it's going to cost 110 to bet. So those are two different amounts of VIG, right?
What is a VIG?
Okay, so it's the like they didn't build Vegas. First of all, people are always saying, "Oh, I did okay in Vegas," and you're like, "Those all these buildings don't look like they're doing okay. That people are going to Vegas and doing okay." You have to pay a little bit for each bet, right? And that is can be a shortcut way to see what Vegas is really thinking about. Because when we're talking about betting series, it's not going to be a plus minus on each thing. It's going to be a minus or plus larger number. And that's that number, right? So the VIG, right? The VIG is right here as we move down to this Pacers game. They talk a little bit about it, right? And you can really see it on the money line, right?
I don't know if I still understand what a VIG is, though.
It's the extra money you pay every time you bet. Like you don't bet $10 exactly to win $10, right? You bet you get a little more, and that's the big how much you're paying to get your $10 back on an even spread, right? And this is all hypothetically. This is all hypothetical.
It's like what insurance against the value of your bet.
Yes, exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
All right. So the next game, you bring in the money line, and so you can see the money line and the spread how they correlate. And I'll tell you, they don't always exactly correlate. And this is how you can find Vegas hedging their bets, especially in close games. So right here you have +2 for the Minnesota Timberwolves, right? So and -2 for the Pacers. They're at home. So and sometimes the money line is going to be even plus and minus. But when they're not even, it's giving you a little hint. All right. So this is a close game. So to it says here to if you had bet Minnesota, you get +110. Plus is always good, right? Because that means that you get the VIG plus what you bet. So if you're doing 100 units, you'll get $110 for that 100 units.
Okay.
When you see that -130, that means you would need to win $100. You would need to bet $130.
Okay.
So you see, that's where the juice is, right? But if it's -2 and +2, why isn't it -110 instead of +110 and -130? That's really telling you that Vegas really thinks that Indiana is going to win this game. And it'll be interesting to go back and see what the results were. But those are some of the little keys you might look at when you're betting, right? And that's on a game.
So when you're looking at this, you can't just look at the spread to see what Vegas is thinking. You also have to look at the money line.
Yes, and it's an additional thing that you also want to look at is what is the percentage of the money.
Oh my gosh.
All right, and this is not to confuse you, but just
I think you it may be a little too late for that.
so when you're looking at it and you're thinking, okay, I like this team, right? If you think you like a team and you think you but then you go on the website and everybody likes that team, you don't like that team. Because Vegas never gets trampled. If it looks too good, it feels too good, it's not that's not the one. Right? Find another game.
Right.
And so, because that's where the percentage comes in, because really, 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 and truly, if you think you're smarter than Vegas, um, you're never going to beat Vegas, and you can only have short wins against Vegas. All right. So
What does
here's
that mean? Short wins.
that means if you bet a lot, Vegas is going to eventually catch up to you. So
Well, I would agree with that.
so you have to be you when you go into gambling, and let me tell you, gambling addiction is a serious matter. And if they have like 1-800 gambling addiction. So if you feel like you have addiction problems, please consult that. But if you can't sit out a game or a day or even a whole season, then you're probably going to lose a lot of money. Because even when you get on a hot streak, the reason it's called a hot streak is because when you return back to norm, you're going to be poor, right? And I personally know 4 or 5 people that I gambled with, or hypothetically gambled with, that decided to go be full time gambling, and you could do full time gambler because they got on a hot streak and they're like, man, if I just won this amount, this is more than I make at work. They all ended up going back to work because I mean, Vegas is just not going to be wrong. So take advantage of your hot streaks, but don't take them the wrong way. All right. So what I recommend for gambling the playoffs, and not football because it's all one game, not college basketball because it's all one game, but when you have series like baseball or basketball, gamble the series, not the games, right?
Right.
And why is that? So say if you had 1,000 units, we'll because we're not talking about real gambling, we're talking about hypothetical gambling. So say if you had 1,000 units, the first round alone, has 56 possible games. Well, so every $20 you would win, you would lose $20, even if you pick the
That
right
would be
team for the series, right?
right.
So we can go back as quickly as last year in the bubble, right? A guy I know who looks a lot like me, but somebody said the Lakers are going to win the series, so they put hypothetically 10,000 units on the Lakers for the series.
Right.
It wasn't a big return because the Lakers were the favorite. So that's not how it works. Like when you pick the favorite, you can't bet $10,000 and get 10,000 back.
Right.
But the Lakers lost a couple of games in the series. If I mean he or whoever that person was had divided that into each game, guess what? That they would have lost every time. When you're betting a favorite, every time the Lakers lost, you lose the whole pot. So that's why I recommend for the playoffs looking at the series odds, instead of looking at the individual odds. All right. So
if you look at
go ahead.
What I find very complicated about the idea of betting an entire series is that a series really feels like a soap opera, right? So the ebb and flow is really hard to define and determine and to predict. And so, do you find that to be difficult when betting?
No, because first of all, what you said is exactly right, and you just said exactly why you bet the series and not the game. It is an ebb and flow, and the worst team in the series is going to win at least a game or two. And then you're going to start questioning whether you should get. And so then your next bet is going to be affected by the last bet that you lost. And instead of when you had a chance to analyze and see what you really want to bet, right? So let's start off here. Can you see the screen?
I can.
So this is a cautionary tale. This is a cautionary tale of why you can't you don't make a lot of money betting a favorite.
Okay.
So looking at this odds, you see the Brooklyn Nets minus 1,600.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is if you want to make $100 on this series, you have to bet $1,600 on the Nets.
Okay.
That's not great odds, right?
No.
But if you had $16,000 and you wanted to make $1,000 in the course of a week, that would be a safe bet. Because for Brooklyn, so the Brooklyn bet is a great odds. If you bet $100 on Boston, you would win $100, $800. But they're not going to win the series. They're not going to win a game. So that's an example of a heavy favorite versus a heavy underdog. But the next series is more realistic, right? The Bucks against the Heat. We were just going back and forth about this before we came live, but you can see here, all right? Milwaukee is minus 280. Forget about what the media said. Forget about who the media favors. Forget about that. Milwaukee is minus 280 for the series, and Miami is plus 230. Right? So
Right.
Milwaukee has the current odds is Milwaukee minus 280. It was minus 270. So it means that they're making Milwaukee more expensive. So when they make a team more expensive,
Right.
that means that's giving you a hint. They may think that that's the real team that's going to win.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Makes
Because
sense.
it started off at 270. Now it's 280. So you have to bet 270 to make $100. Now you have to bet 280 to make $100. Right.
Right. And you want to make the team that you think that's going to win more expensive, because you're going to have so many people
betting the team,
on that team,
the
which
favorite.
means you can drive
Right.
up your profit value. Okay.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
But if you believe in the Heat, and I think it's going to be a close series, right? That's a good bet. If you bet $100 on the Heat, you can win $230. That's a good bet. All right. The next one is another close series that we talked about a little bit on the show last night. You have the Mavericks and the Clippers. Something is going on with the Clippers, though, right? They started off at minus 275, right? So you just had to spend $275 to make $100,
Right.
right? And now they're at minus 430. They have made the Clippers extremely expensive.
Right.
And so, and in fact, Dallas has gone from giving you a return of $225 to $315. And I don't know about that, because after the Clippers, did that kind of avoid the Lakers thing, I just don't know about that. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole, because I still think it's a pick'em series. I think it's going to go 6 or 7. And after last year, even if the Clippers get up 3-1 on them, like, when are the Clippers going to be like, yeah, we got this one after last year's playoff, right? So I think the Clippers and Dallas are both going to feel confident no matter where the series is at.
So let's go back.
Hmm?
If gambling was legal in Georgia,
Uh-huh.
Tell us your series picks.
Well, this the Brooklyn pick, that's obvious, right? But it's not a lot of good odds. That's going to have a chance to be a 4-0 series. I don't even know if Boston is going to win a game. For the Heat and the Bucks, I like the Bucks. And that's a reasonable price as well. So I would bet the Bucks here against the Heat. I think it's going to be a tough series, and I think it has a chance to go 6 or 7 as well.
Okay.
The Mavericks and the Clippers, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. The Clippers are the favorite. In fact, the more I talk about it, if I was going to make any bet, it would be on the Mavericks, right? Because I just didn't like the way the Clippers ended the season.
Wow.
And the way they're counting on this playoff rondo, I just don't know. I don't know that because.
But if you chose the Mavs, it's potentially a pretty big payday.
Right. So here's how I would tie these together. So I would have to make any money. I would have to probably bet 16,000, hypothetical dollars on the Nets just to make 100, right? And so I would probably balance that off by making this my 500, and then I would make plus 315. Like I could make 1,500 off of those, off of that. Is it 50? Yeah, 15. Yeah, 1,500 if the Mavs won. So those are really good odds on the Mavs for a series that's way tighter than minus 430. Way tighter than minus 430. So that's who I would pick.
So that's interesting because you're not just picking based on numbers, but you're also picking based on history. And I think that's what's probably really important, especially how, historically how the season ended for these teams.
Right.
When making these types of decisions. So, okay. Well, Jameed, thank you for bringing us through and providing us a little bit of a foundation in regards to gambling. Doesn't mean I'm not going to have a lot more questions. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to ask some of these things over and over again, because when you're saying it, it makes sense. But when I'm looking at it on my own, it's still a little bit like Sanskrit. So any last minute tips that you can provide in regards to making some decisions about the series that are coming up?
So the only thing I would say is look at the series odds. Again, game to game is variable. Who's at home? Who has the best hotel? All that kind of stuff. No, seriously, those are some of the factors. But it does make watching the games a little more exciting when you have a chip in the game, right? So because if we're Atlanta fans, so we could just watch Atlanta. But by gambling, even a small amount on each series, it kind of makes you. It's just like fantasy football makes you watch teams that you might not otherwise watch. Gambling makes you interested in all the results that are going on. And if you're watching this or you get a chance to take a look at this and you want to take if you have some questions, put them in the comments. We'll answer them like on a mailbag show. And I appreciate people jumping on, even though this is such a last minute show. And I hope you can take this and we'll build on this a little bit until we get to the point where we can use Tia's big brain to get. Until we.
Until I stop having the look of confusion. When I stop being confused, then it will be clear as rain, or as clear as crystal.
Well, I have confidence in you. So just think about the stuff we talked about, and just think about the stuff we talked about, and then look at the games, and then look at the series, and then we'll come back for the second round series. It's less teams involved, and then maybe take a different stab at it and think about what we said that came true. And by the time we come on Friday, we're gonna do a special reaction show. This Sunday. Friday. We're coming on later so we can react to after the game. So we're gonna tailor our show times around Atlanta sports for our watchers on YouTube who watch the replays. You could just watch it whenever you watch it. So thanks, Tia, for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me.
You had some great questions. And I was going too fast. If I didn't explain something well or didn't explain something correctly, just jump in the comments and I'll rehash it again.
Yes. And please make sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And as soon as Jameed figures out how to use Instagram, we'll be a little bit more active there as well. So thank you and have a